Finally, Clemson Sports Talk has come back to Drive Time. Hello, everybody. Lawton Swan back in the saddle once again. It is the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk for you each and every afternoon as you make your way around the great state of South Carolina and beyond, listening to us on incredible radio stations like Fox Sports Radio 1400 in the Midlands and around the world on the iHeart Radio application. Hope you're doing well. Glad to be back with you. I know a tough, bitter weekend for Clemson Tiger fans, but the college football season is upon us, and we have a lot to get to here on the program today. Look, you got to react to this Clemson-Georgia game. You can. I'll be the first to tell you, I missed it by a mile. Not saying I missed it by a mile in terms of the spread of the game. I thought Clemson would win by about 4 points, but I missed it by a mile in thinking that this game could get into the 30s, 35, maybe even 40 points. What a defensive matchup that took place up in Charlotte Saturday night under the lights. The Tigers and the Dogs, an old-fashioned Southern slugfest and slobber knocker, if you will. Dabo Swanny called it a slugfest several times. Some may have said offensively it was slug-ish for sure for both teams, but at the end of the day, it was a big defensive play by the Georgia Bulldogs. That was the difference. And for the first time since, I believe, 1982, Clemson loses a game. Ironically, that game was also lost to Georgia without giving up an offensive touchdown. So 2 scores offensively in the ball game, a couple of field goals for both teams, moments in that game that certainly have a lot of Clemson Tiger fans frustrated by the offense. But this, to me, and I tweeted this out earlier today, there are a couple of things that cannot exist and cannot be, I guess, mutually exclusive. And look, you know this. You're a part of this show. Your boy Swanny does his best, but I am no Bill Shakespeare.
English. Who needs that? I'm never going to England.
But I'm pretty sure the title mutually exclusive fits here when I'm about to drop this little tinge of knowledge on you here. I have heard pretty much ad nauseum since the end of the Clemson-Georgia game about how good Georgia is and how that's an elite program and how they're in line for the college football playoff, on and on and on. I don't disagree. But in my opinion, you can't have that conversation on a local scale, on a national scale, in the Classic City, in Tiger Town, or anywhere else in the country, and then say this. But I just think Clemson's lost it. I just don't think the Tigers have it anymore. Those two things correlate. They are one and the same at this point. And I'll put it to you this way. Yeah, you wanted to win the ball game. I get it. You wanted to win every ball game. You're a fan, short for fanatic. You don't want to lose anything. You don't want to lose 45-41. You don't want to lose 10-3. You don't want to lose 2-0. You don't want to lose. You're a fan. I get it. But you can't have one conversation and then switch to another on the opposite side. Both of these teams are elite on defense. And the way you know that is this. What is your perception of this ball game if it's Andrew Booth with a pick six and Clemson wins it 10-3? Just flip what happened in the game and you tell me then, as a Clemson fan, how do you feel about that Georgia team that you just played? Are they a team that looks like they're falling apart? Are they a team that looks like they can't get to the top? Are they a team that looks like they can't make the college football playoff? Or do they look like a pretty doggone good football team with a great defense? Now, listen, if you ask me my honest assessment in terms of why you could argue against me, I'll give it to you. Georgia was without 4 or 5 of their top targets. Clemson was pretty much full go at wide receiver, and there was still an inability to move the ball offensively on the ground for Clemson that Georgia did not lack. I get all of that. The Lynn J. Dixon scenario, we weren't sure. Got wind right at the beginning of the game that Lynn J. might be in some sort of trouble. Didn't realize it was just, 3/4 of the game trouble or maybe half of the game trouble, but he did finally get it in the ball game. Clemson certainly wasn't able to execute on the offensive line the way you would want it to take place. There were issues with Jordan McFadden, who we have, thought really good things about this entire offseason. But the Tigers at the end of the day, had the ball multiple times with opportunities to put points on the board. My biggest disappointment, you get an interception. You have the ball at the 33-yard line. You have the ball. Balin Spector gets an interception, gets tackled about the 33-yard line. And instead of picking up 5 yards, kicking a field goal, 7, 9, 10 yards, kicking a field goal, you yield 2 of the 7 sacks that you had in the ball game. You back it up and put it in reverse, 9 yards, essentially beginning Georgia's drive as they would eventually take over and then drive down the field and get a field goal to take a 10-0 lead. So instead of making it 7-3 there, it's now 10-0. Then the other part of the ball game that still to me frustrating is the possession when you get the ball to the 5-yard line. And again, this flashes me back to Wake Forest a year ago in the opener, where Clemson doesn't feel confident and cannot punch it in. You're 5 yards out. You got a 250-pound quarterback, and there's no opportunity for him to even run a QB power to get maybe 2-3 yards. Like, look, if Georgia, and my goodness, the monsters on the interior, Dabo Swanny talked about them. We'll hear from Dabo Swanny. His Sunday teleconference coming up here in just a little bit today. We heard from both Brent Venables and Tony Elliott and several players up in Tigertown. We've got audio from both coaches after the game coming up for you here on the show today, and a whole lot more. But their inability, Clemson's inability to score at the 5-yard line, or to even be willing to run QB power in that situation against Georgia's monstrous defensive front, still kind of bothers me. Like, I'm a hat on a hat. Let's go out and get it. And if you can beat me, beat me. And if you, and some of you would say, but Swanny, what happens if they blow up, DJ in that point? And my goodness, based off of the reactions that I saw on social media and the texts I got, some of you shouldn't have cared anyway. I mean, I got texts left and right. Who's our backup quarterback? Let me tell you, if DJ Uiagalelei couldn't or wasn't suitable for you in that ball game against Georgia, you didn't want to see Tyson Pumachan. Trust me on that. That's like trying to tell me that when you had Deshaun Watson at quarterback, that you would have preferred Zarek Cooper. Kelly Bryant, you would have preferred Zarek Cooper. Sorry, Zarek. And most of you go, yeah, and I don't even think that Kelly Bryant was all that great. That's fine too. That's my point. That's my point. Yeah, can we get somebody in there for Big Trev, the Giant Killer? Because he's not doing it for me right now. Cole Stout, get in there. I mean, sorry, Chase Bryce. Sorry. I said Cole Stout, I meant Chase Bryce. Either way, those were the two moments in the game that were still very frustrating for me as an observer of this ball game. Was when Clemson had the ball at the 33, back it up and put it in reverse. And then when Clemson's got the ball at the 5, you don't really do anything on the ground to at least try to get into the 2, the 3. I mean, really to kind of change it up. And again, it was a battle of two great defenses. There is no question about that. 803-450-0086. You want to get in on the conversation, you can. Hope you like the new backdrop. I decided against new paint in the studio. I decided, no, you know what? I think I was going to do it. I had the stuff in the cart. I had the color scheme I wanted. And then I started thinking, I'm like, you know what? Let me set it up and see if I like it first. And you know what? I do. And so now I'm thinking, well, saves myself a little time, saves myself a little work. Appreciate each and every one of you hanging out. Like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget, we have a goal to reach 1,000 subscribers by Game 6. You have us closing in on 500 already. It's been an incredible run. We got our man, the Honey King of the Upstate, Kyle, hanging out with us today. Go check out his honey business when you get some time. He's digging the new Clemson Sports Talk head in the background, the big logo. I said it on Friday when we were talking with Clemson Tom. If the Paul didn't exist, you can't show me a better Tiger than that to be the representation of Clemson University. You just can't. It doesn't exist. If the Paul had never been created, that's your go-to. Simple as that. All right, let's see what else is going on with everybody hanging out with us here today. Edward said, Swanny, what's your feel of the rest of the season? I think it's a one-game mentality, and we finished strong. Look, I said all off season, and you probably know this, Edward, because you're a loyal listener to the show. You hang out with us all the time. I said, look, I think Clemson was more likely to go undefeated losing this opener than winning it. Like, I think they will be supremely locked in. I think the other thing you saw is that, again, there's really not a team on Clemson's schedule that's going to present a defensive front like that. The problem that you have as Clemson at this point, more than anything else, is there is no margin for error. And that's the one thing you haven't had to face in a long time because of who you've been. So you got to go out, you got to win every game. And I think you probably need to be more convincing than you would have had to be if you were just undefeated. And this goes back to my premise on what could happen if Georgia, who you see, look at Georgia's schedule. You fire up the Bulldogs schedule, there's no reason to think that Georgia can't go undefeated into the SEC championship game. And for anybody hammering on Clemson's schedule and how there shouldn't be enough room for them to make their way back, I hate to break it to you, but Georgia's schedule is not all that difficult, in all honesty. You take a look at Georgia's schedule, and I want you to just, in your brain at home, say, hey, would Clemson win or lose that game? Right? UAB coming up this weekend. South Carolina on September the 8th. Vanderbilt on September the 25th. Arkansas on October the 2nd. Have you hit one yet? Have you hit one yet where you went, yeah, you know what? I think they really pushed Clemson. You haven't. You haven't. Auburn, October the 9th. On the road, think they'd push Clemson? Probably not, right? Not any more than they'll push Georgia. Kentucky, Florida, I'll give you that. A challenging contest, but one I would believe Clemson would win. Missouri, Tennessee, Charleston Southern, and Georgia Tech. So let's not and look, Georgia fans, this should not be seen as, oh, Swanny's really beating up on us here on a Monday. No. This is the recognition that neither of these two teams, had they lost this opener against the best team they will play until a championship game, neither of these teams has a whole lot of beef on the old bone remaining here, honestly. Clemson would go undefeated against Georgia's remaining schedule, in my opinion, and would get challenged maybe once by Florida. That's it. So, with all that being said, I think Clemson's biggest hurdle is that Georgia will go undefeated, Edward. And if the Bulldogs go undefeated, they would go into the SEC championship game, I believe, undefeated. And if they lose to Alabama, that might be a worst case scenario for your Tigers. But the thing is, at this point, there are a lot of weeks of college football left. There's no certainty that Ohio State's going to go undefeated after watching them play in their opener. There's no certainty about Oklahoma going undefeated after seeing them in their opener. Again, I don't know what's going to happen out west with Oregon. You saw UCLA this weekend knocking off LSU. I mean, look, Clemson fans, if you're really feeling bad today after what happened, here's what you do. Go put on some LSU gear and stand in the mirror. Oh, you'll feel a lot better about who you are. Trust me on that. Especially given the fact that LSU has a national championship more recently than Clemson. To see that program doing what it's doing right now, oh, it has shades of Auburn and the situation that took place there. What was the coach's name? Gene Chizik at Auburn, when that thing sort of Most of the time people use the term the cheese sliding off of the cracker when somebody's kind of a little out there on something. But the championship cheese is quickly sliding off of the cracker at LSU. You could be them. So just be thankful. Sometimes a comparative analysis helps. When you wake up on a Sunday morning, not wanting to get out of bed as a Clemson Tiger fan, just go throw on another team's gear and look in the mirror for a minute. You'll quickly go, yeah, you know what? It's not so bad here. It's not so bad, 10-3, 2 top-tier defenses. But again, I do think that that's an issue for Clemson, is that Georgia, with one loss to Alabama in the SEC championship, would have an argument over Clemson every single day of the week. And I got no argument against it. They beat you heads up on the field. I mean, the only thing somebody nationally could say is, well, the College Football Playoff Committee likes conference champions. That would be one little thing Clemson would have in their back pocket, but you wouldn't have a head-to-head victory. The other thing would be, well, I really feel like Clemson's gotten a lot better through the season, and I feel like Georgia just leveled off. I mean, those are the two arguments you can make, because on the field of play, the Classic City Dogs were better than the Pickens County Cats. I mean, that's just the way it was. And it was a great game. I think both of those teams are very much still in the college football playoff conversation. Whoever won it, whoever lost it, that was not going to change. The other thing I will say too, and then we'll get into some of the numbers coming up here in just a little bit, 803-450-0086 text line and phone line if you want to hit us up on that front. The other thing I will say, as it pertains to Clemson and Georgia and what took place in Charlotte, to me, as a fan, and I don't think I mentioned this earlier, it was hard to watch because there wasn't a lot of exciting plays. There was a point in the game where offensively, I think the best play for each team had been a pass interference call, maybe even multiple pass interference calls. But it was reminiscent of the LSU-Alabama game, that game that was 9-6, the game of the century back in 2011. We've had several games of the century since as well, but that one ended up being a rematch in the national championship. And recall that it was Alabama who lost the regular season game that ended up dominating in the postseason. Could Clemson and Georgia end up on opposite sides of the college football playoff? And could we end the season the same way we started it, with these two teams going head-to-head? Man, I don't think that's completely impossible. I really don't think that's impossible at this point. In my estimation, Clemson, who was either number 2 or 3, depending on where you found them in the polls a week ago, when the polls come out tomorrow, because we do have a game tonight, when the polls come out tomorrow, I think Clemson is probably going to be probably 6 or 7. And I don't think that that's really a reach at this point, because I didn't see a whole lot of teams on my television this past weekend that would have beaten Clemson and or Georgia. Only one I really saw, I think, could for sure beat both of those teams more often than not. Rammer Jammer, Yellow Hammer. You know it. Nick Saban in Alabama. There we go. All right, out of the gates on a Monday, rocking and rolling your Labor Day with you, grinding along. I hope you like the new backdrop. Give us some feedback. What do you think about that? We'll come back. We'll take a look at some of the stats. What was the stats that were from Saturday night?
We did it. The Buy Low at 120 Forum Drive is now a full-fledged brand spanking chicken clucking brisket rubbing veggie chopping draft